I think that as artists, we create our value, with everything that we do, with how we show up, with how we give to community, how we serve, and, also what we offer in our music. And all of this comes together to make our value and what we believe it to be.
Episode 17 of Invest in Music with Iman Europe. Today we're here to talk about Moneymorphosis, her new project in partnership with Loners. We talk about her background as an artist and as a teacher. We talk about the Alchemist and everything that it took for her to get where she is today. As a reminder, you can collect this episode on investinmusic.xyz. We got a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's get into it. Episode 17 with Iman Europe. All right, we are here today with Iman Europe. Iman, how are we feeling this afternoon?
I'm feeling good, man. How you feeling, Coop?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for taking the time. I know it was a busy morning for you. What's been going on in your world?
Getting ready for Moneymorphosis.
I love it.
That is what we're doing all week, what we've been doing since January. And I'm happy to see that it's like finally here, finally about to be released. It's just, I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited for it too. I mean, it's been such an amazing journey. I feel like we have so much to cover and unpack in today's episode. So maybe we could go back to the beginning. I feel like for a lot of people that know you in the space, you have an incredible following on Twitter. You've been crushing it in Web3. You've been doing a lot of stuff outside of Web3 as well. What was kind of the starts of your artist journey and where kind of everything came from?
Yeah, so I started playing the piano really when I was like 7 years old. And that kind of got me into the music side of things. And then I played until about 18 when I went to college. And then I kind of stopped because we weren't going to be able to pay for both. So I had to pay for one or the other. And when I went to college, I majored in creative writing. So that got me into the writing section. So when you pair the music part with the writing part, you get a songwriter. And I started experimenting a bit in college and found a cool group of friends that were into music too, and we started playing around with stuff. And then, when I graduated, I was like, I'm really going to do this. I really want to try this. This is good. And so I moved to New York, where my dad's side of the family is, and I connected with that side of the family. I got hooked up with my engineer and my producer and all of the team that I needed, and we put together my first album, my first EP. We put that out. We got connected with Selection, that right in the beginning, the start of everything. So that was good. And then I came back to LA and I finished up my album that I had started out there in New York. And I didn't have enough money to put it out in, I had the album done, but it was picked up in Japan, by a label. Actually, it was a distribution label. And so it was being put out, the CD was being put out in Japan, but I didn't have enough for the marketing here. So I started a Kickstarter. And that was the first time I was able to see the power of community, really, and having a product and having people say, hey, I want to see this product brought to life. How can we contribute? And really, it was the precursor of what happens here in Web3, you know? And it was a beautiful experience. We put together enough money to do the marketing run. We raised $10,000 in 30 days. It was great. And the album did well. I toured the album in Japan. I toured it here, and it was a really good thing. And so then after that, kept working. Pandemic hit, and I was just I don't know if I'm liking where music is right now. The traditional music industry just became about vanity metrics, and it felt like everything was about likes and no one was actually going to listen to the music. And I had been working so long independent that I just was starting to get kind of exhausted with it all. And I was thinking about going back to school, maybe teaching again. I taught when I was in that time. I was an 11th grade AP English teacher.
Wow.
So I was thinking maybe I'll teach. I just felt like I needed to learn something new. I was trying to learn something new. And then I found Web3, and it was oh, this is what I'm supposed to learn. And I just saw how artists were able to really, number one, try something new, and then experiment with this new tech and kind of merge music with tech for the first time that I had seen it in that way.
Right.
And, I was introduced to everybody at the first, what is that called? The first, what was the first conference?
NFT NYC, maybe?
NFT NYC, yes. I was introduced to everybody in real life at NFT NYC. So my experience was different. It wasn't like just on Twitter first. I met everybody, and then, you know, like after that we bonded, you know, on Twitter and continued our relationships. But when I met everybody, I was like, wow, these people are so cool. You know what I mean? And it just inspired me to try it. And so, you know, I studied the space a while before I hopped in. And then I did my first release on catalog for And So It's So. And it got a bid before I even tweeted about it.
Really?
And I was like, and it was 1 ETH.
Yeah.
And at the time, 1 ETH was like 4,500. So I was like, what is this? What just happened? And people were like, you got a bid, you got a bid. And I was like, what? I haven't even tweeted it yet. That's crazy. And then I think I dropped another one, and then I did a video, and then I did my first sound drop, and everything was going well. And I just loved that I was able for the first time to set my value for my music. And I could say, this song is worth this to me, you know, and if you believe it, then, you know, you can also, you know, participate in it. But I wasn't able to do that in the traditional music industry, you know, and you're paying for all these studio sessions and photo shoots and video shoots, you know, and like you're getting 0.0033 cents a stream, and it doesn't add up, right? And so this was the first time that I felt like I could really be a part of, you know, creating the value of my music. And so I did my first sound drop. I met David, and he was like, everyone keeps talking about you. Who are you? Everybody tells me I have to know you. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm Iman. And so we talked a lot. He was just building sound, and it was within the first month of building sound. And I wanted to help him in whatever capacity. He was doing so many things, but I really loved what he was doing. I loved what he was trying to build for artists. It was something I'd never seen before, but something I always thought the industry needed. And so we talked back and forth, and I ended up becoming the head of artist relations at Sound. And so we did that for like a year and a half, and then I kind of wanted to take kind of a step back after I onboarded people and, you know, kind of did the things that I set out to do, you know, the promises that I made David, the promises that I made myself. I felt like I completed. I brought in a lot of artists of high quality. You know, I got people introduced to Web3 technology. I saw people doing well. And I felt like now that I got everybody in motion, I can kind of take a step back and focus more so on my music again. And so that's where I am now. And I'm happy to have done all that to be here.
It's amazing. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, but I just commend you so much for finding your community so early in your music career. You know, and I feel like even being with Selection early on and doing all that work you did out in Japan and whatnot, I feel like you really were able to identify the value and the power of community long before you started doing stuff in Web3. And I feel like that's kind of what made you such a good fit when you did start to play around in this new world.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I definitely think everything added up for this. Even the teaching, right? Because I had to, in my day-to-day job at Sound, onboard so many artists, right? And that takes patience, and it takes, like, you know, being able to teach people about Web3 and teach people how to onboard a song, right? And so when I look back, I'm like, I needed every single part of the journey. Yeah. The ones that I'm like, why do I have to do this? Why am I? Because I started off substitute teaching. And then I moved into like a full-time role. I'm like, why am I doing all this? I just want to do music. What am I doing all this for? And it's crazy when you see like the way everything plans out.
Did you have a moment when you kind of realized that music was meant to be your full-time pursuit and passion? I feel like a lot of creatives have that kind of story or that moment when they realize like, I don't want to do teaching anymore. Like, I got to go for this.
This is so good. So I was teaching my 11th grade AP English class, and I was teaching them The Alchemist, the book The Alchemist.
So good.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And there's a part in the book when, you know, Santiago has to go and work at the merchant store and all this stuff. And so my students, I'm teaching, I'm in front of like 30 kids, and I'm teaching them, I'm telling them they need to follow their dreams, and they had just found my music online. Revolt had reposted me, so they had just found my music. And so, that whole week they were coming up to me like, Miss Europe, you do music? Miss Europe, when'd you make this song? Miss Europe, do you know Cardi B? And I'm like, oh my God. So this whole week we're leading up to this moment of me in front of this class, and someone raises their hand and they're like, well, Miss Europe, you're telling us to follow our dreams. How come you're not following yours?
Wow. And
I was just like, in front of the class, just like, and I see everybody looking at me. And I'm like, well, you know that part in Santiago's story where he stops and works at the crystal merchant store and like he's taking steps along the way to get to his treasure and to get to his journey? That's what I'm doing. This is just a part of my journey, and I'm happy to be here with you guys. And they were like, okay, that makes sense. But in my mind, I was like, that was the cue that I got to move.
Yeah.
And I finished that semester, and then that's when I went full into like the Kickstarter and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that was probably a really big transition for you too.
Yeah.
Teaching. My dad's a teacher, and I feel like what you get from that is you get the security of knowing that you have, a community around you in the education system, and you have a pension and all these things that are set up for you later in life. So to be able to recognize that there was something bigger for you and almost take a step back from that must have been a very crucial decision for you.
Yeah, it was hard. And it was hard also because you create bonds with the students, right? And like you want to see how they go into 12th grade and and be a part of their journey. And but I knew I had all these eyes on me, and I need them to see I actually need to be the living example of what it means to follow your dreams. If I'm going to be teaching that, I got to live by it too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I feel like a lot of that comes through in your Twitter. I feel like one of the things I love the most about what you're posting, it's always very inspirational, it's very motivating, it's telling people to pursue their dreams, and I feel like you've really developed a voice for yourself to encourage other people to take that same initiative that you did in your life.
Thank you. Yeah, I do, because I still have some of my students follow me. So I still think like sometimes I think about putting stuff for them, but yeah, I appreciate that. I try to use, all my outlets as much as I can to share like the learnings that I'm learning in real time and just things, that I'm experiencing. Yeah.
I want to zoom into what you were talking about with onboarding, because I feel like that's such an important topic. We are still in a place where onboarding anyone to this world is so confusing.
Yes.
I feel like the narrative as to why you should be involved changes every day. The way to get involved changes every day. How did you feel like your teaching background enabled you to help onboard artists to the space in a meaningful way?
I think that it helped me figure out how to break things down to size in a way that was relatable to people. And so when I tried to explain an NFT, I didn't say it's a non-fungible token, because they're like, what is fungible? And, what's a token? Like, I started off with, the best way to think about an NFT is it's a digital collector's item. So the same way, our parents grew up collecting vinyls, and that was like a physical collector's item. We're in more of a digital world now, and what artists are able to also, offer their fans and their collectors and their supporters are these digital collector items, and that's the NFT.
Yeah.
And so the same way that you don't, you can own the vinyl, but you don't own the rights to the vinyl. You don't own, if I buy Marvin Gaye's vinyl, I don't own Marvin Gaye's like music, but I own that vinyl. And it's the same thing with NFTs. Like, you can own your own copy, but you don't own like the music. Because that was a question I got a lot from artists. Like, do they get to own my,
Yeah.
And so that was a question I had initially too.
I feel like one of the hard things about onboarding is that it's so complicated to convey what's going on here. I feel like for someone like yourself, even explaining what an NFT is, it's like that's only one of 5 variables that you need to explain to someone they're getting involved.
Yeah.
Because they can make a wallet, they can mint their song, they can be out there, and then they can get 5 mints, And I guess the challenging thing to convey is like, how do you actually portray the ways to get involved in this community beyond the act of pressing the button? Because I feel like that's where you start to see things really happen for you, is when you develop a community and a brand and a voice beyond just actually using the technology itself.
Absolutely. And that's why I always say these NFT conferences are so important because that's how I got involved, and I really think that helped propel me because I met everybody in real life and, you know, not a PFP. You know, I was able to put like a name to a face and meet people, and they knew who I was when it was time for me to drop. And I think that really is, you know, a difference. It does make a difference. And also when you come to these conferences, you can ask questions in real time about what we're doing here. I was able to learn a lot just by being able to have a conversation like this, you know, and yeah, I really do think that the community aspect is super important, and you don't even understand what the community really is until you are with people in real life. So.
That's facts. That was literally the start of my whole crypto journey. It was like 2017. I remember I went to Singapore for this blockchain conference, and I had no clue what the hell was going on. You know, I had been like on Twitter and Telegram, and I was like, I'm just going to go out to this conference, and you start to see things a little differently, you know?
Yeah.
You start to see the people that you feel like really have a good, you know, they're in the community, they actually have a vibe with it. You can tell that there's people that like them, that are talking to them, they know who to introduce you to and whatnot. And that's very different from someone that's got a booth that they paid $20,000 for to be like posted in the corner, and you're like, yo, like you start to learn how to move a little bit different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm curious for you, like what were some of those first opportunities that allowed you to get deeper into kind of the on-chain community and the crypto community? Like what were some of those things that, how did you even hear about NFT NYC the first time to be able to go there in the first place?
Yeah, it's Visionaire is the great. I don't even know if he's in the space still, but man, he introduced me to it. This is a really funny story. I thought I was getting into NFTs. Like the first thing I tried to mint, which was never successful, was a quote on Twitter.
Wow.
Because I had gotten I had gotten my quote taken from me. Somebody had like taken my quote and then went on TikTok and was trying to like repeat it verbatim. And I was like, what? And then it kept happening. Like it happened like 2 or 3 times. And then I was like, how can I own this and like let people know that this is my quote? And then someone said NFT it. And I was like, I heard of that because I was on Twitter and I think I saw Latasha doing stuff, and I saw someone else's. I think it was Ibn. Maybe it was Ibn. It was someone else. I saw people doing stuff. I was like, I heard of that. What is that about? And then someone said, oh, I know someone who knows about it. And then Visionaire, I got connected with Visionaire, and we hopped on a Zoom call, and he was like, okay, yeah, you can NFT a quote, but like, Iman, I follow your music and your music's really good. Why don't you do that with music? And I was like, you can do that with music? And he was like, oh yeah. And so he gave me a breakdown, man. He was so kind, and like, oh man, I forever am grateful for him for just being so patient with me. And he showed me what a good onboarding looked like because he answered all my questions. He just was so patient and very informative. He really knew what he was talking about, and I trusted him. And he was like, look, in 2 weeks, there's this thing called NFT NYC. You should come. And I was like, money's kind of tight. And he was like, if you can make it, I really think it'll be worth it for you just to come and meet people in real life. No pressure, but if you can make it, this is a perfect time to come. And I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a try. I like scraped up the last little dollars I had. I told my dad, I'm coming so make my bed together. He was like, all right. And so I came, I went, and I can't remember the name of the first event that I went to, but I think I met Brett that night, Blockchain Brett that night. I think he had an event. I think Daniel performed.
Yeah, it was probably Music NFT Movement.
Yeah,
the original one.
Yeah. I went there.
Yeah, the hotel rooftop.
Yes, that was it. I went there, but there was another one before that. First, I met up with everybody, like Latasha and everybody from Zootopia, and we were in like Manhattan taking pictures, and I was like, who are all these cool black people? There's black people in this? And I was so excited, and everybody was just like dressed cool, and the vibes were so high. Everybody was so vibrant. I was like, oh, I just like this as a group of friends, okay? And, we mobbed all throughout that day, going to different like NFT events together. And then I think we ended up going to that one the next day. But it just was such a good bonding experience before anything else. Yeah.
I think that's one of the underrated things about the space is that people sleep on the people, you know what I mean? And like the friendships.
Yeah.
And the conferences are a vibe. You know,
They're
like I say to people,
vibe.
like in music, you go to festivals, you go to concerts and whatnot. In crypto, you go to these conferences.
Yes.
And like on the surface level, you're like, why would I want to go and talk to a bunch of projects and meet a bunch of nerds? But like, that shit was popping. I mean, especially that NFT NYC, like that was like peak bull market, like energy was high. There was like 50 events happening. Like it's very hard to describe the feeling and energy around a good crypto conference until you've been there. But that really does cement kind of like the significance and the culture around it because you start to feel it in a lot more of a real way.
Yeah, we have fun, man. We don't just talk all day about NFTs. I mean, we do for sure talk about NFTs, but like we have fun. We play music. We, you know, like meet people. I don't know. It's fun. And especially when you think about how much interaction you're having with these people online all the time that you don't get to hug or you don't get to see. And then it's like you build all that up. So then when you're able to see them in like 3 months from now, you're like, oh, I've been talking to you for the last, 3 months every day, but now I see you.
Yeah.
It's different. Yeah.
And I feel like I love that you continued that to Sound Lounge and what you did here in Los Angeles. You had a show that you performed at. And for me, that was one of the first like LA live music on-chain events that happened. You want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, I was really excited about Sound Lounge Live, and what I wanted to do is bring like live instrumentation into the Web3 space because we have a lot of really dope shows, but I hadn't seen anything like all fully live yet. And most of my shows that I do as an artist are live. Those are the ones I love the most. I love performing live with a band. I just think it brings like a different element to everything. And I made it clear, like, guys, if we do this, I want us to do everything live, like, except for like the DJs, of course.
Right.
But I think especially in LA where the music scene is really big, I wanted to be sure to have something that the music scene here in LA would just come just because it's a good show and then learn about Web3, just kind of tuck it in there. And then for, Web3 people to just want to come for Web3 stuff are able to come and see like a great live show, and bridge these two worlds together, and everybody's kind of getting together. And I think it was good. I think it was a perfect blend of everybody kind of coming together. And I'm really grateful. Like, I'm grateful for like Sound helping me put that together, and I'm really proud of how it came out.
Yeah. It was incredible. And I think that's honestly the X factor for just on-chain music in general, is I think a lot of Web3 is a net new form of culture you have to learn about. Why would I want to collect a profile picture? Why would I want to mint this content, etc.? For music, it's always been so obvious to me, like what it means to have an emotional attachment with that art form, like when you're going to shows and when you're listening to music. And at least for me, in my experience, I feel like being able to highlight the talent that's being developed here in the on-chain music space with, a live show, it helps to just crystallize that moment a little bit more and say like, I'm going to collect this song because when I hear this song be played live, the relationship I have with it it's really hard to describe unless you've kind of been there before, And I feel like you've just done such a great job of taking your music and going from having it minted on Sound to then performing it and kind of creating these experiences around it that really help you just solidify it as a whole.
Thank you. We also did like a live minting portion that kind of got wiped in, into everything because we were just such in the vibe.
I minted it at the venue.
You did? Oh, let's go. Yeah. That's fire.
It's always getting the service. That's the hardest thing. I feel like
everyone was so drunk.
Yeah, everyone was definitely blacked out. On that first Sound Lounge, people were wasted. I have a funny ass story of Rio. Rio was on one of that Sound Lounge. Yeah.
Was he?
Yeah.
I didn't even see Rio. I told him the next day, like, yo, I didn't even see you. He was like, good. Because I was drunk.
Yeah. But that was fire. That was such a good moment. And I think there's honestly something to be said too for just like minting at a live IRL experience. I'm so incredibly excited about the future of live events and how you can be supporting these artists in real time. And what you did for context was, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a song that went live during the time that the show was playing so people could mint that song for the first time as you were on stage.
Yes. I love that. Like, and I hadn't seen it. Well, I think someone else did it before. Who did that before? Someone else did a live mint. But I always remembered, like, I want to do that. That's really cool. Yeah. So I was happy we brought that back.
Yeah. And I feel like going from the live element, I want to talk a little bit more about Moneymorphosis. And I think that the live part of it that's interesting here was the writing camp that you guys had to be able to actually make this project in the first place. So I'd love for you to maybe just give some visibility and context on the project as a whole.
Absolutely. So I think Rio reached out to me maybe around December of November of 2022. And he was like, yo, we're about to start doing these loners artist EPs and projects, and we want to highlight you as the first one. And I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, I just want to make sure you get a moment, because you really deserve a moment, like, in this space. And I appreciated that. And so we figured everything out. We were able to get Kaylin a fly-in, who is my producer, my longtime producer. We've been working on an EP for a while, Chrysalis. And we thought that this might be a good time to kind of come in and work on this as a small project that'll open up to the big project that'll be Chrysalis later. And they flew him in. Ron came, Hino came, and they got us a spot for like 3 days. And they put all of the equipment that we needed up in there. And it was a really a good breath of fresh air, I'd say, because I had been working so hard that whole year prior, and I was tired. I just was really tired. I hadn't had that kind of strenuous work that I wanted to do. I signed up for it and I expected all of it, but I was tired, right? And so this was like January, it was a fresh start. And I think we went in there maybe the second week. And aside from like making the music, it just was such a good reset. Right. It was quiet in Joshua Tree. It was cold. And it was just the four of us. And we got to like really sit and talk about what I wanted to do. I knew I had this theory, and this theme really that I wanted to be sure to, what is the word I'm thinking of?
Maybe like crystallize it, or
yeah. I had a theme that I really wanted to be sure to map out, and it was always the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. That's the through line in all of my music. My first EP was Caterpillar, and it just talked about being uncomfortable and wanting to grow and not liking where you were. I made it when I was in New York, and I just was I hated it. It was cold. It was the worst. I was like, I hate this. Yeah. I always knew it would be a trilogy. My next one would be Chrysalis, and the final album would be Butterfly. And so Moneymorphosis was like this in between before you get to the Chrysalis, kind of like prelude of that. And we didn't know it would be called Moneymorphosis. We thought it would be called Silk, because a caterpillar spins silk on a tree before it goes into the chrysalis. So we started it as that, and then we actually made a song called Moneymorphosis, and we loved it. And that became like the anchor of the project. Right. And so we started creating around that. I think we created 3 of the 4 songs there. And then, later we added in like the last song, and we did some interludes and just brought it all together. And we really worked on it since January. I was still working at Sound at the time, so it was kind of hard for me to do both and go all the way in. I got a little more time, like around May, when I pulled back a bit, and I was able to rest more and create more. And then I was able to focus on this a little bit more and work through it May, work through it June, and now here we are. Yeah.
And I feel like it's such a defining moment for your career too, because as you said, I feel like you've been spending so much time helping to onboard so many other artists that being an artist is a full-time job. You know what I mean? Yes. And especially now in the current market, and especially now with everything that's going on, releasing a project that has as much significance as what this has, it's a full-time job and a half. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is. It is 2 jobs. Literally. It is 2 full-time jobs. And people used to say, I don't understand how you're doing this. And I'm like, I don't either. Yeah. I don't know how I'm doing it. I'm just making it happen. But I didn't want to just be making it happen. I like to do things with intention and all the way through, And so when I was feeling like I was halfway and like couldn't fully execute, I knew I had to make a call to come back to myself, because not doing music, I had been doing music like nonstop for 12 years, right? So that was the first year that I just wasn't doing music every day, and I really do think it was taxing on me, because I just didn't have the same outlet. And like as a creative, you really do need that. And so Yeah, I just had to make the call, and luckily the team was so like supportive of everything. They knew that I was an artist. They knew, and they were just grateful that I, came in and helped as much as I could. But
Yeah.
I had to make that call for myself that, yeah, I gotta do what makes me happy,
Yeah.
yeah.
It reminds me a lot of your teaching story with like the Alchemist moment. It feels like kind of the continuation of that. You know what I mean? I feel like in a lot of ways it kind of like, if we stick on the Alchemist theme, it reminds me of when he's in the oasis in the desert. You know what I mean? Where you have this part in the story where he's like super comfortable. He finds this girl that he loves and he knows he could stay there for a while, but he's like, I got to go do something bigger. You know what I mean?
I can't stay for just this.
Yeah.
Because there's something bigger calling me, and hopefully you're here at the end of the book. Like hopefully you're here at the end of the story. And hopefully it all works out perfect, and everything that he needed was granted to him at the end of the story. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't lose anything for good that he really needed.
Right.
And I think that's where faith kind of comes in. Just like, if this is something that I'm feeling really called to do, and I'm happy I did it, because the project wouldn't have come out, I don't think, to this level of quality if I was still halfway doing it, or it would have been way later. I wouldn't have been able to really lock in and do what I felt like I needed to do for it.
Totally. And it's having that belief and that faith, right? And I think something that's so important is right now we're in a spot where it's really survival out there. If you the people that are listening to this, they're obviously super invested in this space. I mean, it's fucking tough out there.
Yes.
For artists, for collectors, for builders, for project founders, we are in a point when a lot of people are wondering how to just keep the lights on. You know what I mean? And I think for artists, especially someone like yourself that has such a big influence in this space, we're at a point here when it's like just having the wherewithal to put this out and to put a stamp on this moment in time and say, like, this is very important and defining to me. It's so powerful, because when you look back on whenever this does figure itself out, whether it be 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to start to look at this and it's going to be, like the early history that helped to inform this space. And I think that's very, very powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I wanted to make sure that it was something that was of substance, and that also people in this space can learn from, because I think we sometimes can look at this space as just like a money place. You got to get all the money, right? And it's way more than that, especially for artists, right? Like, we have new outlets, and we are building community, and we are getting support we never had, and it's just so much more than just money. And that's like the long story of Moneymorphosis.
Yeah. Can you share that excerpt from your dad that you were just telling me about? Maybe just the spark notes on, or however you want to present it.
Absolutely.
It was such a beautiful message that I want to make sure we capture it on this episode as well.
So I sent my dad the Moneymorphosis preview, and he loved it. And he said, in quotations, "The eyes of man are never satisfied," end quote. "Money ain't enough. It's almost impossible to teach this to a person with low funds, that there's nothing at the top. There is no top in human terms. First thing you realize when accomplishing money goals is that so-and-so has more. Better to learn satisfaction at one's current level than to always want more. Tweak your level, then move to the next. Be a satisfied person. Satisfied people have money. Unsatisfied people, money has them. It internally rots the bones. This EP got me preaching, LOL. Very fresh and innovative. So much wisdom. I love it."
We're just going to pause for a second on that one. That is beautiful.
Come on, Daddy.
That is beautiful.
Come on, Dad. That's right, man. That's where I get it from.
I love that. I mean, it's just so powerful, too, because it speaks so well to, just the space and where it's at as a whole, where you're at as a whole right now, and there's so many powerful messages in it.
Thank you.
How did that help inform the way that you wanted to release this project? I know that there was a lot of thought that went into kind of this proud to pay model, the way you're doing 100 editions at $100. Can you talk about all this stuff outside of the music and the way that you thought about structuring and bringing this to life?
Absolutely. So I am so inspired by Nipsey Hussle, and not only the music part, right, but the way that he was about his business. He was very much about his business. And I know he was dabbling a little bit into Web3 and coding and stuff like that before he passed. And I always wondered, like, what would Nipsey do if he was here? I just think he would love this. He would love this tech, and he'd be running with it. And I don't know what it was. I think I had a dream. I've been dreaming lately, y'all.
Hell yeah.
I had a dream, and I woke up from the dream because me and Rio and the team had been figuring out like how we wanted to structure the payment part. We knew everything else, but we were still like figuring this part out. Like we knew we want to do optimism, but like how do we price it and stuff like that. And it came to me when I woke up. It was like proud to pay, you know? And I thought about how Nipsey did 1,000 copies of his first mixtape and sold them for $100 each. And when he first said he was going to do it, everybody was like, what? You can't do that. But he had community in LA. He had people who loved him. He had at least 1,000 people who loved him in LA alone, right? Yeah. And he just believed in himself. He was like, listen, this is no force, you know, if you proud to pay it, like if you believe in the project, you can pay for it. If you don't want to, that's fine. I still feel the love. But he was like, this is the value of my music. This is, and he was like, I wanted it to, you know, make a statement that I have people that believe in me enough to pay 10 times as much as what they would pay for a mixtape on the street, you know? Right. And, you know, I think him being bold enough to kind of stand on that and say, what I'm offering is of quality, and I believe that I have the support from my community, and this is what I'm standing on, and I believe it'll be fine. I think there's so much more in that, especially like with so much that's happening in this space right now, not even only in music, but just like we've been going through like a lot of craziness as far as like racial slurs and people like, you know, making a token that is just crazy, and just there's so many things that's going on, and I feel like a lot of Black creators are feeling like there's no space for them here. There's no community here. There's no like options for us to claim our value. And it just felt like more, we had already decided on the price beforehand, but I was actually going to just kind of push the release back after everything that happened last week. But then everybody was like, nah, we full speed ahead. We gonna keep going with our plan. And I'm happy that they pushed me to do that, because it all ties in with value at the end of the day, you know, and standing up and saying this is what my value is and I'm standing on it. And I can stand by the project I'm putting out as well, you know. And so, yeah, I just really like that Nipsey taught me that, you know. He taught me what it means to stand on who you believe you are, you know.
And I've always felt that energy from you. I feel like since
you.
your very first drop, you've always stood on your value and said, like, this is what I believe my music is worth.
Yes.
And time again, it's been reciprocated as that.
Yes, thank you.
I think that that's so powerful to say. I feel like we were talking about this earlier, but we've gotten to a spot now where I think a lot of people are confused about how to value their own music, you know? And I think as an artist, being able to put yourself out there and say, this is what I believe my music's worth, you know, it's a very powerful place to operate from. Absolutely.
And I think that as artists, we create our value, you know, with everything that we do, with how we show up, with how we, you know, give to community, how we serve, and, you know, also what we offer in our music. And all of this comes together to make our value and what we believe it to be. And I think that there are different options for artists, right? There are, of course, like the one-of-ones, and then there are the collections that are, you know, of high caliber, 0.1. I've done those, you know. I've done the free releases. I've done, you know, like the low mints. I've done all of them, but I always know that I'm choosing my value in everything. Regardless of what I'm doing it for a reason. And it's not because I feel like I need to cheapen myself to be accepted. I will let something sit on the blockchain as long as it needs to sit, you know, because at the end of the day, I want to feel like it was what I wanted to do for that song. You know, it was what I wanted. And I do think it's important, though, to have options and have like different drops do different things, and some are accessible and some are more high end. I do think that just like with any other brand, right? Like sometimes there's a sale. Sometimes there's a Gucci sale, you know, and sometimes I'm trying to go get something for Gucci for cheaper, you know, but I know what I'm getting when I'm deciding to go get Gucci. You know, I'm going to get Gucci. Like, if you have Iman Europe in your wallet, that's like a pretty big cool thing, right? Yeah. Like, that's like a real staple, especially this one because we're only doing 100.
Right.
And I didn't want this to be something that everybody could have. Like, if you have this one specifically, it means something. Right. I want to bring back like that fun and engagement. There's no pre-sale. Like, you just got to show up on time. Like, I want to bring back that fun of collecting, you know, and like being, did I get it? Like, I got it. I missed that, you know, and I think we had that right in the beginning because it made people show up and it was a game, you know, and so, we're bringing that back. I
think there's so much to unpack there because I feel like, you know, the analogy to this being like a high-end drop is so cool because we never really had that in music before. You know, it's just like you listen to it on Spotify. I also think what you said about like letting it sit there because it's what's of value to you. The space is so dopamine driven. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't pop off in the first hour of your drop, you're like, I failed. This sucks.
No. Yeah. Absolutely not. Let it sit. And sometimes it'll happen quicker than you want. And sometimes it won't happen as quick as you want. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's really not about that. It's about the release of the music. It's about the music alone. And just finding the people that resonate with you and resonate with it, you know? I think
that's it's so powerful to be consistent right now too, because I feel like so many artists, like teams that are not fully ingrained in the space that I work with, they come to me and they say like, I don't really understand why we're doing this right now. You know, the space seems to be dead. No one's really following it. And I try and really explain to them that it's not about you making thousands of dollars in this new technological space. You know, it's about you having a presence and a footprint for when this develops over time, because you can show that you were there and that you showed up. And it's hard to get through sometimes because I think that a lot of, you know, artists that aren't like able to go to the conferences and meet the people and whatnot, they just don't really understand why to be here yet. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why that exists. And it's something that I'm trying to work through every day. But you know, I see projects like this and it just makes me so happy and inspired because I do believe that this is the most pure representation of what it means to be a part of this culture. And it's projects like these that really just define the space for a whole.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And, you know, I always tell those people who ask me, because I also have artists, you know, say, I just don't understand why I would try. And it's like, just do something cool. Just try something new. Try something fun. You know, it's more so about fine. And if you want to look at it this way, there are a lot of fans in this space. You are just finding new fans also. That's another thing. It doesn't have to be about, you know, the gain all the time. I think more so it's just about the experience and the experiment of it. You know,
I think people are, you know, scared to fail in a lot of ways, you know, especially established artists that already have a following and they've kind of been used to them getting this, adulation and this respect. If you put something out there and you only end up getting, you know, 10, 15 minutes, it can be very difficult to kind of like sit with that. You know what I mean?
We just have to redefine what failing means. You know? And I think that really is the thing that's making people pull back a bit, is the fear of failing out loud. And I really think failing is just when you like give up for real. That's when you fail. That's when you've accepted failure, you know, as a possibility. I have a really hard time with that. I will try things very long and hard. I will try past the end point because I don't like the idea of giving up, because in my mind I equate that to failing. But anything up until then, like, it's experimenting. You know what I mean? Like, all this stuff is new, so you can't be afraid to fail.
I think something that I struggle with too is like the difference between giving up on something and recognizing when it doesn't serve or fulfill you anymore. You know, I feel like there's like experiments that you run, there's people in your life, there's projects that you work on where you want something to happen so badly and you can see this vision for what it could be in an ideal state and it doesn't become that. And it's challenging. You know, I'm a very optimistic person. You know what I mean? I always want to try a million variations at something to get it right.
Same.
There are some times when you just got to be like, this isn't serving me anymore.
And you got to surrender that. Surrender is hard. You know, surrender is what I feel I continue to be called to do. And I think that we have this weird idea that we can control things with our little human selves, right? And like we can control the way things, you know, end up for us, and we can really like play out different scenarios of how we think this will end. So when they don't go that way, it's hard to let them go, and it's hard to be like, oh no, this, you know. But when you surrender, usually things playing out the way that they're supposed to. And I think it's a weird thing about surrender. I think surrender actually gives us the response that we think control is going to give us.
Right.
We think like by controlling everything, we'll make it be what we want it to be. But it's really when we let it go that it looks more like what we really want.
Yeah. And I think that's what attraction is.
Yep, absolutely.
100%. And I feel like it's such an interesting space to leave this conversation because we're at a point where all signs around us, things are gloomy. You know what I mean? It's hard out there. People are struggling. And here we are talking about this beautiful project, you know, in the middle of a bear market, you know?
Right.
So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it was amazing to hear more about your background. And I'm really excited to collect this. So I'm really excited for the rest of the world to hear it too.
Nice. Thank you, Coop. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Moneymorphosis out now by the time you listen to this episode.
Yes.
We'll see you guys again soon.
Let's go. Peace, y'all.
Peace.